Welcome to Mick and the Psychic, where we leave no stone unturned as we explore all things outside the apparent physical realm.
There is no intent to teach or make you believe or disbelieve anything. It is just a safe space to listen and explore with us.
So for this next episode, you have permission to open your heart and mind as you join myself and Xavier on this deep dive into the unknown.
This boy was telling me about the trees that were talking to him when he was on the playground. And I said to him, so what do the trees talk to you about? And he said, well, the trees give me missions. Every day is a different mission because I need to help someone or tell them something.
This week we have Nathan Poe. Nathan is a lifelong clairvoyant who has seen and engaged with the spirit world throughout his childhood. Since 2010, he's been living a double life as a school teacher and as a clairvoyant healer. Nathan was inspired by the children who gravitated towards him about their imaginary friends, encounters with elemental beings, and precognitive dreams, which is pretty exciting. Seeing the similarities in his own childhood made Nathan determined to help teach and guide children and families to have a better understanding and relationship with the spirit world. As well as one-on-one consultations and intuitive development workshops, Nathan is also a podcaster, who would have thought, with his new podcast, Clairvoyant in the Classroom, that he uses as an educational platform and coaching service for teachers and educators around the world. As if that's not enough, he's also the author of best-selling Intuitive Child Oracle cards. So exciting. And he's on the show with us this week. Welcome, Mr. Nathan Poe.
Thanks for having me. It's such an honor and a pleasure. I just love your show and all the different topics you've been diving into. So I was really hoping to be on your show from the moment that it came out. So you got a good time.
Good manifesting, Nathan. And then you just did this amazing post that reminded me, like, top of mind. And I saw what you said about children, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that is such a topic dear to my heart, something that comes up with my clients, and the reason why I love helping children as well, and educating parents. So this is what I'm looking forward to hearing about. And then I'm like, oh, that is such a great topic to talk about, and so I asked you. So good manifesting, good job.
Thank you. And yeah, it's really close and dear to my heart, you know, having been through it in my own childhood, working with other people's kids as a clairvoyant healer and as a teacher, and even now as a parent. You know, as parents, we've got so much space to guide and teach our children how to navigate the world. And to me, when I think of learning about intuition and living intuitively, if that's something that we're inborn with and it's natural and is most amplified when we're children, it's like if you learn to work with it and engage with it and respectfully appreciate it from a young age, it can be something that can guide you and support you through your whole life as a lifelong skill.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to grow up to be a psychic or clairvoyant, does it?
No, not at all.
Just exactly learning the skills to help you with your intuition, decision making, staying grounded.
Absolutely. Learning how to navigate emotions is probably one of the biggest things that I come across in my work. You know, working with children who want to, or they have the need to know how to shield or ground themselves, or, you know, distinguish what's theirs and what's not theirs, and just learning how to set boundaries. You know, it all comes down to being able to tune in with yourself and listen to your body, listen to your senses, and interpret the energy around you.
That's wonderful. People are learning about setting boundaries now as adults. So like, and working on what does that even mean? So teaching children that from a young age is really important. Let's go to the start. So you said,
sure thing.
You I'm sure we'll get back into this stuff again, but like you said, for yourself, for your own childhood experiences you had. So can you just tell us a bit about, well, as much as you like, about your past and where it started?
So my earliest memory of engaging with the spirit world is probably about as young as 3 years old. And the first memory that always comes back to mind is being 3 years old and waking up to go to the bathroom one night, like in the middle of the night, and, you know, following my nightlight to the bathroom. It was literally just out of my room and around the corner into the bathroom. But as I looked down the hallway this one particular night, I could see, like, bright and clear, there was a tiger just sitting there. And like, I think at the time I didn't have the vocabulary to describe what it was, but I knew it was a tiger because I'd seen pictures of tiger before, like, you know, on like the tiger balm,
Oh, the tiger
medicine jar, and
Yeah.
like on a truck or something driving by. And like, I just knew, oh, it's a big cat, like, and I got scared. So I ran to my mum's room. And then when I got to my mum's room, the tiger had actually followed me and started brushing up against my leg, just like how a cat does.
Wow.
And then so it just sat there. And then I thought, oh, this actually feels like I feel safe. I remember feeling like really comfortable and warm.
Wow.
And just held, you know. And from then on, every time I sort of saw tiger imagery, I just felt back into that memory. And so now, as an adult reflecting on that, I can acknowledge and recognize that that was my animal spirit guide at the time.
Yeah. I was going to say, is that what you worked out when, like, now you worked that out?
I worked that out now, but like,
know,
I wouldn't have known that as a kid. And for me, I grew up in not an overly religious household, but, you know, I was brought up Catholic and went to Catholic schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found that there wasn't that opportunity for me to engage in the kinds of conversations that would help to explain things like seeing angels or seeing colored orbs while I was in church, or
Wow.
You know, seeing dreams and dreaming about people who either had crossed over or dreaming about things that hadn't happened yet, and then experiencing that real sense of familiarity and deja vu.
Yeah.
Like, for me, it was like going to a new place and it was like, oh, I know here, I've been here before. And I remember that happening so many times as a kid, like going to, like, say, we used to go bushwalking a lot as a kid. And so I'd remember or recognize these places and know where to go. And I'd always be the one at the front, like, you know, walking on my own because I'd know where we were going.
Wow.
And I'd be waiting for the others to catch up, like my parents and families, other families. And towards between 9 and 11 or 9 and 12, I felt like I had a lot of difficulty getting to sleep. And at the time, I wasn't sure what it was, but my mum didn't know what it was either. And it was like every night I'd be awake between like 11, 12, 2 o'clock, like around those times I'd always be up, and it would be so difficult for me to get back to sleep. And sometimes it would feel like I was being squashed, and other times the ringing in my ears would get really amplified and I'd be leaving my body. And like all these kinds of experiences really freaked me out, and I didn't know what to make of them. And I didn't know how to express this to my mum, my parents. And part of me thought I was going crazy. And then, you know, mum thought I was just having an overactive imagination and you know, watching too much TV or something like that.
Yeah.
And then as that kind of continued on, I remember seeing this image of like a Chinese opera performer, like coming by every now and again. So it was like the spirit of this Chinese opera performer who'd been bothering me.
Singing really high pitched or something, or like just visiting?
Just,
Yeah, was that the ringing in the ears?
I can't actually remember. I think the ringing in the ears was something to do with leaving my body as a precursor.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay.
I didn't actually hear anything from this opera singer, but they'd just be there, you know, in all their costume and their makeup, and it would just be so. What's the word?
Surreal.
Yes, surreal, but like so. I can't think of the word. It would just really grab my attention, and like I just couldn't get that image out of my head.
Yeah.
Close my eyes, and they'd be there, and like I just try everything to get rid of them, make them go away.
They're like, no, I'm here.
Yeah.
Are they a guide, or did you work that out?
I wasn't too sure. Like I felt a little bit frightened at the time, so I felt more like they were trying to bother me.
Okay.
Because I didn't like it would feel cold around them. So thinking about it now, I felt like they were just attracted to my energy.
Yeah.
And, you know, wanted my attention.
We love interviewing leaders from different walks of life about all things outside the apparent physical realm.
And the one constant is that these phenomena are transmitted through energy.
So we've teamed up with Subtle Energy Science to bring our listeners energetically encoded technology you can use on your phone, laptop, computer, or tablet.
Turning your device into a powerful personal quantum energy tool. We're not the creators, nor are we qualified enough to explain it, but there is a mind-blowing number of scientific studies available on their website.
So what are we qualified enough to explain?
Yeah, not a lot, but we've tried it ourselves. We've blind tested it on unsuspecting loved ones, and we know that it works. That's why we're so excited and pumped to promote this technology.
There are stacks of products, but for July only, we've got 20% off Pineal's sleep support with promo code MATP-861. We've been using the Pineal sleep support over the last few weeks.
And we've noted deeper sleep and at times profound dreams. So have a pen and paper by your bed.
Link is in the notes. Back to the show.
And then by about 12, 13, I just wished it all would just go away. Like I wish all this would just stop. And then it just went and it just stopped.
Wow.
And I think by about that time, I started skateboarding, and then like, you know, that was a whole different world for me, and it just blocked it all out.
A nice distraction.
It was a bit of a distraction, I think. And then there were little episodes like here and there of it trying to come back through again. Like when my grandparents passed away on both occasions, like I dreamt about them the night before the funeral, or at their funerals, like I'd seen them walking around, like just wandering about, milling about in the
Awesome.
in the crowd.
How was that when you'd been kind of paying more attention to like maybe ollies and dropping in on ramps? What was that like to then just go into a funeral and then all of a sudden
I'd just be like
the experience of seeing them? Did you think it was just imagination?
Yeah, I
writing
thought
it off?
yeah, like at the time I still didn't think like, oh, this is because I can see.
So you didn't think it was real?
Spirit. I didn't think it was real, and I thought, oh, this is all dumb. It's just wishful thinking, or you know, I'm just going crazy because I've lost someone and I'm being emotional.
Yeah.
And I think at the time as well, like in my teenage years, like I didn't want to be seen as different, and I thought if I told my mum, she'd think I was crazy, or she'd think that I'd needed to go to a doctor and get my mind checked out or something, you know. And I know it's difficult to have these kinds of conversations in a home where if you don't have that kind of support or understanding, like it can be very easy to think that there's something wrong or that you're sick. Or
so in your family, was there no one in your family that kind of had this kind of thing going that could talk to you about it?
No, not at all.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And just a little side note on that, I connect a lot with my grandparents now as an adult, and they always tell me how glad they are that someone in the family actually can hear and understand them, because it's that connection that kind of keeps them coming back to exchange love between the world of the living and the world of spirit.
Okay.
Can you still
So-
see when you go to a funeral now? Can you see other spirits or people crossed over their own funerals? Because I can. So I just wanted to know if there was just your
Yeah.
grandparents, so the love connection, like.
No, I think I've been to 2 other funerals since I was 18. So
How many? Okay. Yeah.
not that many, but I do know that when I was at both of those funerals, I dreamt about them the night before, and I've
Mm.
seen them both there as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I've noticed that where there's a lot of love and a lot of people are thinking about the same person, this is the easiest place.
Yeah, it's
to
like it's like
someone.
holding the door open
Yeah,
nice and wide, and
They can't not be at the funeral just to check it out, see all the loved ones, or the love and thoughts about them are pulling them in there so strongly. I
yeah,
actually love
absolutely.
funerals now because I can see, yeah, I've saw my great uncle dancing, doing the waltz down the aisle when his favorite song came on, and
Mm,
they might stand up there supporting the person speaking. I see them put their hand on the shoulder, and then I see the
mm.
person not knowing that they're there, kind of look or twitch or something, and you're just like,
Yeah,
"Oh."
it's an interesting it's an interesting observation to take note of when you are at someone's
Yes.
funeral, and
Right.
you know, you've got your speakers who go up and speak on stage, and you'll see them like with a hand on the shoulder or a brush through the hair, and
Yeah, and to see how they react without realizing that
yeah,
it's
without realizing that it's the energy
a
and
world it would be if
presence.
everyone could experience what clairvoyance that can see.
Mm,
See, because
mm,
then we wouldn't feel so much loss and grief when someone
totally.
So at the
Yeah.
funeral, then, like, are you saying that when so people that maybe don't experience or understand their own clairvoyant nature or
Mhm.
whatever, the love that they have and just the energy from being there, just that, you're saying that opens a door to bringing
Totally.
spirits in, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
it's
just
the
the
love
energy
that,
from the people.
yeah, the love that exists
Yep.
between the world of the living and the deceased that
Mm.
helps to build a bridge so that they can
Wow.
connect easier.
Wow.
strong.
Okay.
That's why we say, so whenever you think of a loved one that's crossed over, it brings them in. So they never miss special events in your life because you would be thinking of them, wishing they were there. So of course they're there. They don't miss it, anything.
Mm.
So which was really beautiful to know. So the more people that we can share that with on podcasts, and then when we meet them and educate them, I think the better. Eh?
Mhm, totally. And I think this is a whole nother topic that we'll
It
go
is, yeah,
into, because
exactly. So we're not
it still fits into my story, but
Good.
I know
Okay,
it's
we'll let you
really
continue your
beautiful.
story.
It's a really beautiful side note as
Yeah,
to
love
help set the scene for what comes
Ooh,
Great.
following. So
okay.
when I was, by the time I was about 19, I had a knee surgery. And part of my knee surgery, like my rehab for that, was to practice yoga. Yeah, skateboarding injuries. So part of the rehab was to practice yoga, and that led me into meditation. And then from there, like, that started to switch my intuition back on unintentionally. So, you know, like those moments where you think of someone and you see them in the street, or your phone rings and you know who it is. Like, those are some really common examples of how intuition comes through. But those were on like full blast for me. So then I felt like, because I was having a lot of more quiet time to myself, I thought, am I just going crazy here? Like, because I'm spending so much time on my own. And that led me to start reading up on more topics around like spiritual development and intuitive abilities. And that was at the same time where I started like volunteering in schools and connecting with children, and they'd just gravitate towards me and tell me about some of the things that they were experiencing. And I think like what really pushed me towards wanting to, you know, be an advocate for the children and celebrate their intuitive abilities and help them to develop and understand and nurture them, was there was one particular boy who I was working with when he was in kindy, and the teachers just all said, oh, he's just weird, he talks to himself, and you know, he plays by himself, and he's just in his own little world. And being a volunteer at the time, I kind of spent more one-on-one time with the kids who needed more support. And it turns out he was really intelligent, and he just wanted someone to share his experiences with. So this boy was telling me about the trees that were talking to him when he was on the playground. And I said to him, so what do the trees talk to you about? And he said, well, the trees give me missions. Every day is a different mission because I need to help someone or tell them something or do something that helps them to feel better.
Wow.
And I just thought, wow, that's really incredible. So being on playground duty and just observing how this boy interacted with these trees in the playground and how that translated into him supporting other kids on the playground, that got me thinking like, wow, this is really something. And then what really threw me in there, like it made me put my foot down, was like a couple years later, seeing this same boy and how he'd kind of developed with that. And it turns out that like he was always being singled out by the teacher. He was being bullied a lot by the other students. You know, he's different. The other kids and teachers thought he was different. He was
Which is what you were so afraid of.
Exactly. So because he was so open with his gifts, like he actually went into a really big withdrawal and, you know, isolation and shutdown because of those experiences at school. And I just thought, like, that's just so heartbreaking to see a kid with these kinds of gifts get shut down and teased and singled out and just labeled and isolated. And yeah, from then on, I just knew I needed to do something about it and started studying. And yeah, that led me on my journey to learning to be a clairvoyant healer. And I think at the same time, I started writing the Intuitive Child Oracle cards and started to write my own workshops for children. And yeah, I think that's all.
Yeah.
That was like my turning point, like the critical mass of like, you know, I can't stand for this anymore. Like,
Wow.
I can't see kids being bullied for just being authentic.
Yeah. It's really interesting. That's so upstream thinking. It's kind of like health promotion. It's like spiritual health promotion where you're getting to, you know, these humans before they're either deconditioned or they just write everything off and have all of these issues in their adulthood.
Exactly.
But they end up seeing me and Xavier, a whole lot of other people to try and sort through, just wade through all of this mess. So much of it starts like at the beginning, doesn't it? This is where, you know, we question things and, oh no, that's not true, or try and fit it into some kind of shape. What an incredible gift to be able to work with these young people. Do you get much backlash from people that go, oh, you know, you shouldn't be encouraging, you know, these kids' imagination or think it's real?
I personally haven't had too much backlash. I think that when I've worked with families, they're the ones who are coming to me because the parents don't understand, or it's a very real reality for the children. And I certainly believe that as we progress through the generations, they're going to come through more and more sensitive. And it's been showing since the 2000s when, you know, maybe even from the 1980s, and like with every decade comes a more sensitive generation, and their way of relating and their way of engaging with the world is so different to, say, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And it's just going to keep on building on top of each other.
That's a massive theme we're getting just from guests coming on the show as well. I mean, Tony Riley basically said that word for word. She's seen it as well. So it's very interesting that this is happening, and maybe we're just a little bit more open to respond better. Now that we know more, we've got more information, and we realize that we don't know everything. Maybe we can respond better.
Yeah, absolutely.
How great to have some leadership around that, though. You know, like, how do we do it?
Yeah, and I certainly feel like there is more of a push towards like more broadened perspectives, say within the past 5 to 10 years. And while that's slowly starting to catch on, one of the themes or one of the trends that I've noticed, say within education and say even within, say, the corporate world, is that there's more inclusion around like promoting mental health and well-being. And when I look at that, that's only like the tip of the iceberg, because the way I see it is that our intuitive abilities and our deep connection with ourselves is like the pinnacle of mental health and well-being, because it forces you, or it pushes you to go right in there, get right in and deep and in touch with the senses and authentic self.
Yeah, authentic self. I think that can be a very challenging and difficult thing to get to. There's a lot you have to admit and accept when you're an authentic self within a character.
Yeah,
exactly. I love that how right from our childhood we get guided to what we're supposed to be, like what our path, our best purpose is. So for you, you had these abilities and things that were quite prominent to you from a young age. And I love how when you just said, no, I don't want to see this anymore, it stopped. Do you ever, if some child is overwhelmed with things that they're seeing and feeling, do you let them know that they can just say, stop, I would like to, maybe this can come back in the future and I'm ready, I don't want it now? Or do you teach them more softer ways to understand and handle it? Or do you do both depending on the circumstances?
I do both depending on the personality and the temperament of the child and the kinds of things that they have going on in their life. So it's not a one size fits all kind of approach. And it's funny that I mentioned that, because a lot of school education seems to be that way in terms of, you know, say addressing like additional needs or something like that. It's a very one-sided approach with, you know, either medicate or don't medicate, medicate or don't medicate. And then there's all these other things you can look at, like their physiology, their respiration, their nutrition, their sleep, their physical activity, and you know, engaging different intelligences. Like some might be more creatively inclined, some might be more musically inclined, visually inclined. And you know, in these modern times, I know it's really simple and a no-brainer to say that you can just look at the whole child rather than just one way. And I think they're starting to catch on, like in terms of like mainstream schooling and the way that they deal with the needs, the expanding needs of child development.
Exactly. That just reminded me of the movie The Blind Side that I loved, and we just watched it as a family the other day because I was the only one that had seen it. And in The Blind Side, there's this African-American guy who was in a prominent white school, and he had really low grades, but then a teacher saw something in him, realized that he does know the answers, but he doesn't read very well or write very well. And she worked out that if she just reads him the questions, he can answer, and he was getting his marks up, doing really well. And the other teachers adapted in the other classes. And this was based on a story that just reading him the questions and letting him answer without having to write it down helped him, because some people are auditory, some people are
That's all right.
so yeah, it helped him and he got his grades up, and they allowed that to happen. But then, like, that was years ago. I still see it happening now where teachers don't adapt as much as they could or are allowed to. But they don't have that freedom to teach. And that's just not with just learning, but exactly like helping people, in any area, different kinds of learning in every classroom. You got to try to do all the different types to reach all the kids.
That's
that it
right. Yeah.
can
I'm having crazy flashbacks to when I was a youth worker, and there was a really tricky, I'll say tricky client. It wasn't a tricky client. It was a tricky situation where it was a year 8 kid, and he wasn't going to school, and he had what came across a fairly severe case of agoraphobia. So I couldn't even go out to see counsellors or anything like that. I started doing some outreach at the time. So I went to his house to spend some time with him. And I was expecting to go, okay, great. And I put in all of these practical plans to slowly integrate him back. And he wasn't even interested. He humoured me with ways of integrating him back, because it wasn't kind of the main thing that was going on. He was recognising different people from his past lives, including his cat, which his cat was just there to support him. So I was like, oh, wait a second. So exactly what you're talking about now was happening where the school was a Catholic school. The school wasn't accepting some of the things that he was saying. He was brave enough to just be himself.
Wow.
Mum was really concerned. You know, his doctor was like, oh, he's lost his mind. And it was probably the first time I'd had a client where what was presenting as like a fairly significant mental health issue, there's something inside me going, I don't know, or you know, this could be something that is, because it was just the way he was talking about things is just like, was really challenging for me to accept maybe what he's got to say, maybe it's true, you know, and they're trying to treat a mental health condition that he seemed fine about the whole thing. and he ended up integrating, he ended up going back to school. He just needed someone to sit down and just listen to him and just hear what he had to say without judgment. So whether he did have a pretty serious mental health thing going on or not, he already had a doctor, so it's fine. I didn't have to deal with any of that or do any kind of diagnosis, way above my pay grade. But I could just sit and listen and ask him questions and be curious. And then I felt silly because I thought, damn, this kid's starting to convince me when all I'm meant to be doing is just listening out. But all of this is coming back now, just going, wow. And I still don't know, obviously.
It sounds like it was a great opening for you to start to be open-minded.
Totally.
And it's how you approach things now with a let's just go with it and see what happens, which is beautiful.
Absolutely. A great gift that, and a great gift that young person had given to me. Whether what he was experiencing was real or not, I can't judge that. What do I know? But thankfully, he kind of opened my eyes that what do I know? You know, so it's very interesting. And that only just came back then, particularly as you were talking about that student that was quite isolated. Like, he couldn't get more isolated than not even being able to leave the house. And it was, he wasn't able to leave the house. It wasn't, what it came down to was that just because no one understood anyway. And everyone judged him, so why bother? And he kind of humoured me and ended up integrating back and going back to school. But the being at school or not at school was nothing compared to, you know, this amazing information he was getting from past lives and what he knew about different people. But he was just so calm. He was just so like a really wise older person where he's like, oh, my doctor, he's trying his best. This is what he knows. This is his education. This is a year 8 kid.
That's right. I was just
of course, I sound, he goes, of course, I sound crazy. It makes no sense. So he's just doing his best. It's fine. He goes, but I'm not taking the medication.
Love to meet him.
You know, it's just like, whoa, who knows?
Imagine.
But it's very interesting that, you know, and his poor mum, like single mum, had to work full time as well, and like worried because her child's not going to school. Like, you really feel for her. Like, that's hard. So her biggest thing is to try and get this kid like well again and normal, because if he's not normal, he's going to struggle.
And that's something you do
that's the magic.
Parent.
It's not normal. How's he going to survive if he's having these thoughts of all this? Like this child that you had, like, how's he going to survive if he's getting missions from trees? That's not going to get him a job.
Might.
You never know.
Well, you know, things are changing.
So do you box like?
But for all the right reasons. You know, we're trying to put the kid in a box and make them normal. You know, there's one
Yeah.
thing if it's some horrible clandestine thing to control people, but it's another thing if it's just people going, oh my God, how are they going to survive in society? If they're like this, we've got to try and get them out of this phase. How do you combat that? Can I just start with this? Did you have this bias yourself at some stage to think, do I help this kid embrace his connection with trees, or am I doing this kid a disservice by pulling him down this road?
So for me, it was about being able to acknowledge that they have these gifts, and at the same time showing them ways to manage it or contain it so that they, say, relate to their gifts in a private way, or they apply a filter and, be selective of who they choose to share with, or, encourage them to write in, say, a journal, or illustrate the pictures, say, in a special book that only they're allowed to see.
Wow.
And just teach them how to manage it, or encourage them to work with their gifts in a more private kind of way.
In a healthy way where it doesn't squash it and say, this isn't real, you've got to pretend and do something else. But at the same time, not, you're a fairy child, just go out there and cars will stop. You're still going to
so show them there's
look
balance.
both ways. Yeah,
And
right.
Essentially just help them to stay grounded with it all.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's still the same now, because we're people are becoming more open to understanding that children and people in general have these gifts and abilities. So is it still needed to hide it? It feels a little bit like Marvel, where there's a special school for kids with abilities, or Hogwarts, and you're supposed to not show anybody else your powers. Like, good to repress it, or is it better to let people know that there's more to life and show what we can do? Or because it's the innocence of a child that it might be too much, and let it out when you're adult more, so when they can handle what people's opinions are. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so for me, it depended on the child and what their needs were and what kind of environment they were in. If they had some supportive people around them, then I would encourage them to open up and share it more.
Yep.
Whereas if they were in more of a closed off environment, it might have been something that they just document for themselves and then share with, say, like in our sessions together. Say as as our special club kind of homework kind of thing, more than just spilling all your ideas and all your information out. But I think now, because kids are coming in more sensitive and more open to some extent, I would encourage them to find a creative outlet for that to come through in.
And depending on the child, I love that, depending on the child and their support structure and what's going on, because it's so true. You're shaping a kid again, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you've got to be kind of fluid with what their needs are.
Yeah, and it's all about building them up to to be themselves and be comfortable being themselves.
Exactly. Adults battle with that. I know when I first started learning how to become clairvoyant, because then people don't even realize you can learn this. I think you only have people like you, Nathan, who are born and have early memories of this. They don't realize that someone like me, I didn't really have any experiences that I noticed from a young age. So I learned when I was older, but then realized I had been doing some things when I was younger. It just wasn't as obvious as yours. Anyway, when I was first discovering, and I would have opinions and be talking about things from a spiritual perspective, I would sometimes get shut down by other people. And I had to learn to not get offended and just to come back with, it's okay, this is what you believe, this is what I believe. But it took me a while, and I would shut down and be two different people. One person at spiritual circle with my shiny friends, or people like you, and then another, the old version of me, with people that would judge me. So
muggles,
adults, with muggles, for an adult who's struggling with that, for a child, if you throw them in the deep end and tell them, just let everybody know it's fine,
it'll just squash it, squander it.
Yeah, we go
very
backwards the
quickly.
other way. So yeah, it'd be important that they learn the skills to be able to handle different opinions and what people say, so they have that emotional maturity. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, that's the
Mm.
word. Yeah,
Handle
I remember having a girl in high school. She was in about year 8, and she was like very out there and very open with her gifts, and you know, talking about her imaginary friend on the playground, and you know, that led her on a downward spiral in the beginning. And then as I started working with her, I was showing her ways to acknowledge that they're there, but just imagine that, you know, you've got a secret language that you speak with this guide of yours and that you speak through your mind. And just keep in mind that everyone can't see your guide. So you'll just need to speak in your mind, write it down, maybe draw pictures of what you see, and let that be the way that you disperse that energy and get that out of you. So I think there are a lot of times, especially for children, they get excited, or you know, they have this energy that needs to be expressed. So having a way to just document that just helps them to get it off their chest and helps
I have a
them.
fun example of that, actually.
Yeah.
So my eldest daughter, and you know how before you said you saw colored orbs, so she worked out that she would see could tell the difference between angels and fairies, and she would see a colored orb, and she would know the different colors meant different kinds of angels, and sometimes she'd see them above someone's car. And so I tuned and told her that they've called on, say, Archangel Michael or someone to protect them or that person while they're driving. So that's why they had that color above, say, their car, or a different above someone's head. She'd see an orb, or when she saw a cluster of little ones, she worked out that they were fairies rather than angels. And we looked it up one time and realized that was a common thing, and she was so excited. And this was when she's in grade 3 or 4. She was really realizing this more, and she was seeing a lot. And I'm like, that is so amazing that you can see that. And she'd share it. So what she had at school, they have this picture storybook competition every year, and the kids have to do it for homework. But then if you want, you present the book and it goes into a competition. So she wrote her book about fairy lights. And it was all about the garden, and this little girl could see the fairies, and these fairies, there was a part 1, and the next year she did part 2, like a continuation. And one of them was they were in the garden, and they would encourage people. They were happier when people wouldn't litter. And she wrote the message in the book about cleaning up your rubbish, and the fairies encouraged this little girl to put a sign saying clean up your litter after your picnics, because the fairies are happy when you do good things in nature. And so these are things that she would know from the fairies about littering and taking care of animals. And so we thought it would be fun to put it in the book. And she'd giggle that she's telling this story that's true, but people don't need to know it's true. They're going to think it's made up. So it was like her little way of getting it out, putting it out there so kids might read it and learn. And she said, but they'll think it's just made up, but it's real. But other kids, she goes, I reckon some other kids will read that and go, I see those fairy lights too. And then they won't feel alone.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
How sweet is that?
The perfect bridge.
Wow.
So
in like
cute.
grade 3 and 4, she's thinking that.
Yeah, and she's still she's 16 now. She
Special
just turned 16. And so sometimes she sees, like, she'll go to me and say, I'm seeing like a light, a bigger energy over there. And I'm like, well, I can't always see the same thing as you, so probably.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's so
my
beautiful.
kids chose me as a parent to encourage it, but then their dad's a complete opposite, and we're divorced, so they have this other life of opinions, but they know they can talk to me about stuff.
She just saves it for when she's with you.
Yeah, like my son used to have
that's so
imaginary
beautiful.
friends as a child, but now and I remember some experiences. I've told him how he saw someone who'd crossed over, and he was describing it to my friend and things like that. And she's like, yes, that's right, that's the street he used to live on. And he was communicating as a 4-year-old and telling her stuff. But now he tells me he can't remember, or he just made it up and things like that. I said, no, you didn't.
Yeah. Or I think it's common for people to kind of repress that, or you know, set up a mental block to disassociate,
protect themselves sometimes as well.
Even with me as a parent, he's more like towards his dad's views at the moment, but this might shift in the future. I'm not going to push it on him or anything like that. Look, that's okay. It'll come back if it ever needs to, and I'm here.
Well, that's so beautiful that you've helped to nourish and nurture that with your children.
I think it's because like my parents are a bit open-minded, and I think,
Yeah.
but
Mm.
not like, so if I saw things or heard things, the common thing I've found with other kids is that if they see things or hear things or whatever, the parent will go, well, I can't hear it or see it, so it must be your imagination.
Yeah.
So is that like that's what I see? And then so educating the
Mm.
parents, I think, is important to let them know just to be open-minded, because children can see, hear, and feel much
Mhm.
more because they haven't grown out of it yet. So
Yeah.
so the parents it's just your imagination, like you're turning them into them. So then it's
Yeah.
like
So
Mm.
what should parents, like parents that are listening now and they might have some kids with magical stories, it might be imagination, it might be real. What should parents do? Like what's a good
what's
thing,
tips,
I
positive
would
thing that parents can do if like
I would
you know,
I would encourage parents to document them, and
oh,
that way, as you document these experiences, you can start to see a pattern, say, of when they happen, where they happen, where they might,
wow.
when, who around they might happen.
oh yeah,
And I think a lot of parents often think that it's just their own child that experiences this. But if they document it and say they come together and find some like-minded parents or parents who might be experiencing similar things, then they can share, and then they can start to form more of these connections. And that's probably one of the
That's so good.
best things that I've noticed.
Because you do forget stuff and you forget when and you forget, you know, so documenting it.
So
that's
documenting
wonderful.
them to help to kind of follow the leads
Right.
and follow the breadcrumbs. And that way, when they get together and they share, they can see that there's a common experience. And that's when they can start to acknowledge that, you know, my child's not alone in all this. It's not just my child who's experiencing this, but it's something that's very relevant, very natural, and very real to them.
Yeah, I actually saw in this mums group on Facebook, it's not a spiritual one, it's just a typical mums group, and they did a leading post question saying, what's the freakiest thing your child's ever said?
Fun.
Well,
Amazing.
I scrolled through and every, I reckon 9 out of 10, but there was thousands of comments where parents saying that their kids said creepy stuff like, I was your mum last time I was here.
Wow.
And things, all past life stuff, all they've seen spirit things. There was so many. And I thought if parents just read through this, they would see that their child is not the only one. And a few, I couldn't help myself. I had to like reply, and I tried to explain that that's really normal and it's okay. There's nothing to be scared of. And it could be a past life connection. But if you're concerned, you could go see someone who, without saying I do it, you go see someone who can help with a past life healing and clearing. And isn't that interesting? Or trying to make it so they're not scared because they would say it's freaky or it freaked me out, or because the parents will go into fear mode thinking their child is strange.
Or it's safer for the parents as well. So not just the kids that try and look normal. The parents look normal if they go, ooh, that's freaky, rather than that's interesting.
Yes. So
I think changing the terminology around
the language.
The language, that's
and
right.
educating is fantastic. So that's why I love this podcast, and because then people can go, wow.
Can you tell us about your podcast?
Yes,
So my podcast is called Clairvoyant in the Classroom.
Fantastic.
And my intention behind it is to debunk a lot of the myths around intuitive abilities, as well as educate, empower, and enlighten parents and educators of all different backgrounds about the world of energy and how it influences us in our development, in our learning, and in our growth and everyday life. So I only started it in December last year, probably around the same time you started your podcast.
Yeah.
And so far I've covered topics ranging from things like ADHD and autism to kindergarten mediums, to the power of words and setting intention, to say like the energy of a room and how clutter affects the energy of a room. So I'm just trying to bring forth all my experiences and all the things that I've learnt while working as a school teacher, but also living a double life as a clairvoyant healer.
I love it. What a beautiful energy. Do you find the kids gravitate towards you in the classroom for deeper conversations than just what you're teaching in class?
Totally. Like outside of school, like conversations about things outside of learning and things just around like their own health and well-being. You know, I've always loved teaching kids just simply how to breathe and engage with their breath. And you know, we do meditation and guided visualizations, and it's all fun, and I think it adds to the learning experience too. And my intention with all of this was to help teachers to teach better through getting a better understanding of kids and things that influence them as teachers and their presence, and the things that influence behavior and emotion, which really all comes down to energy.
Your podcast is great for parents and teachers.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Awesome.
Have you had Chris Spicer on your show yet?
Yes.
Oh, who's that?
Chris. Okay, so we were lucky enough to have Chris Spicer on our show. So she works with kids with autism.
Okay.
And that they're incredibly.
She's an angel on earth.
She's an angel on earth. And you two on the same podcast, I'd pay money to listen to that. And I don't pay money to listen to podcasts. That would be amazing.
I'll have to look her up.
Just you two together, it would be like the greatest podcast. Very important. So it's interesting. One thing that she picked up a lot on was a lot of the issues that, you know, kids with autism struggle with is a lot of that is due to that they're so spiritual that this other stuff, the really practical earthly stuff, isn't happening as much. So she works so much with them about not squashing that, and then exactly what you've been talking about, grounding. Just helping ground them without squashing them, not dragging them to the ground, but helping
and celebrating them.
Helping ground them.
It's like guiding the energy down rather than just pulling out the plug and letting it all fall down.
Wow, I love that.
That's probably the best way I can describe it.
That's good.
So
to help
interesting.
fit in, like we were talking about before, like about how, you know, it's just helping him fit in and function in society, as well as acknowledging what they can do and their gifts. It's a beautiful energy of being able to celebrate kids with autism and ADD, and without making them feel like they're always in trouble or there's something wrong with them. Because you just see the light in her eyes change when she's talking about these kids.
Totally.
Knows how beautiful they are. So it's really nice, because a lot of people would just be like thinking of them as trouble and hard work
or challenging.
And I think it comes down to, you know, a lot of it comes down to, say, having them trying to fit in as normal, seeing them through a medical perspective. And it's not to put a blanket on the medical perspective and the medical profession, but it's about being inclusive of all perspectives and all dimensions of our health and well-being and our development and growth, and being able to see and celebrate all the things that make them whole. And when I've touched on the topics of, say, ADHD and autism, I've relabeled them, relabeled the acronyms or the labels to, you know, give them a more empowering name and help them be seen in a different light.
What are they?
So for instance, you know, ADHD is normally known as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But for many years now, I've been referring to it as attention dialed into a higher dimension. And for me, the word like autism has, you know, while it's spelled AUTISM, I've always seen it as AWETISM. So like awesome.
That's so sweet.
Autism.
So good.
I know there's just so much power and vibration behind words, and part of me just thinking of them in different ways is to flip that switch and to start setting intentions to see them in more empowering ways.
I had a he's still here. Have a very close friend of mine that I worked very closely with as well. And look, he never had a diagnosis of ADHD, but he's always just been like, so go. He's just been really high functioning and very intelligent. He's got very high IQ. He gets by. And he never even wanted to talk about it because people would say, oh, you've got ADHD. And it used to really cut him up, even in his 30s.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to him, like, dude, you've got MAC, which is multiple attention capability, which means you've got to do certain things to like refocus on something and then go back to it. I go, but people are just jealous that you can have like a billion different ideas at once. Yes. And you've just got to work on things. Like, don't see it as like a disorder that you were never like given. See it as like, this is like a superpower. But your kryptonite is that your head's everywhere. So, you've just got to do your focus bits. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. That is
so amazing. I love that.
And that freed him in his 30s. And that was just a mate catching up. But like that freed him even in his 30s to just go, yeah, stuff it. This is me. Like,
on you, Michael.
I don't need medication to stop that, because it is reframing that. If we look at things where we see someone as different to an ideal normal person, which no one is, then we go, okay, and it's with the best intentions. This is the problem, is, okay, there's a problem. We need to label it like these symptoms together so that we can have a fix. And there's nothing wrong with the DSM-5. And it's really, really important because it pulls things together to watch patterns, right? It's important to see patterns because then you can go, okay, this helps with these patterns, or this doesn't help when you've got this pattern, right? So it's actually really important. It's just how we've taken that information and used it as an identity for somebody that you've got.
And that's exactly what I was about to touch on. Like,
great, please do.
When kids notice that they're given a label, then they start to identify it. And that's how they introduce themselves and how they relate to themselves.
Yes.
And when we can spin these labels around or try and remove the stigma from it, we can start to see them in more empowering ways.
And the issue I notice in schools, though, like they because my kids have got different things going on.
Yeah.
And that's how I describe it. They've got different things going on. They're all very different. Some are being diagnosed with things, some haven't. It doesn't matter. But at school, they encourage you to go get them diagnosed, because then they'll get funding and they'll get more support to have a learn. So then, but not all parents or children want to be labelled or want to label their children with this.
They struggle through.
So then they struggle through and don't get that extra help that they're entitled to. My daughter's got something called APD, which is called auditory processing disorder. And if she was having a lot of stress at school, by the end of the day, she'd have a meltdown. This is one that sees angels and stuff. Have a meltdown at the end of the day and take it out physically on her siblings sometimes, because she'd be so stressed, because it's about struggling all day to process what you heard. And it got described for an English speaking person that a third of what you hear is like Chinese to you, or gobbledygook, because you don't understand what they're saying if you don't speak the language. And so she'd be constantly trying to figure out and have to be a leader all the time, so she knew what was going on, blah, blah, blah. It's exhausting for her. So once we knew, we learned how to adapt and help her and not give her homework straight after school. She needed downtime and not have the TV on in the background so she could just focus on thing. And then I realized I have it too, but it wasn't a thing when I was a kid. So it's newer. And one child in every classroom has this apparently, but then other things, she wanted to be diagnosed with certain things so she can get help. And then
it's a relief.
At the same time, she's like, but I don't want to be labeled as that because I'm more than that. That's your solar plexus, like freaking out, like not introducing yourself as I'm a mum or a teacher, or like just your labels. What's your personality? What are your passions? That's what I encourage people to introduce themselves as. You're more than your titles. So throwing that out of whack. So and other kids are, they've been diagnosed, so they get funding and just so what do parents do in that situation when they don't really want to they can get the diagnosis to help them at school, but then teach maybe the child to describe themselves as in a different way, like those positive spins on the
Yeah,
characteristics that they have.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably a very personal kind of
Yeah.
decision for someone to make, whether they get a diagnosis or not. But I think
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it all comes down to how you see it and how you treat it and what kind of environment you foster within, say, your home or your classroom around meeting the needs of students or individuals who have these extra accommodations.
Yeah.
So what was I going to say? I just got distracted. I had a really great question and it's gone.
That's okay. I think what it comes down to so much is like not necessarily the diagnosis, but the fact that it's the diagnosis has the word disability in it. And I've got some very close friends with what is called an intellectual disability, which is like quite severe. And they call it the D word. And I think I've said the D word and called it the D word maybe since I've known them, maybe 10 or 12 times, because I've had to, because we're applying for funding or something like that.
Yeah.
And the look on their face when they have to hear it or say it in relation to themselves is just, it's the most horrific thing. It's like you're tearing a piece of their soul.
Gut wrenching, soul destroying.
Gut wrenching. And they're adults now. But that D word is just horrific. Without the diagnosis, though, they wouldn't be able to be in supported employment. They've got a child together. They've got a house that they rent. They're amazing. But it's like, it feels like the stigma that comes along with that identity is the thing that we need to work better. How do we do that? Because obviously in schools there's certain things and stuff that you can do. What about parents listening that have had to get a diagnosis or something? What are some things that parents can do to help around the stigma of having that diagnosis?
The first thing that comes to mind is, as a family, they can come together to work on making up a new label for it. Something that's fun and creative and perhaps is ability focused and talent focused, or seeing it as a gift or a superpower. I think that's probably the first thing that comes to mind, especially with younger children, because if that language starts from a young age, that's a weight that they're going to carry with them for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely.
Until they find a different way to speak or relate to it.
Which is hard because it's in the subconscious now, particularly at a young age, that's locked in there. So it's tricky to do later on.
Yeah, so I think the language is really important from a young age. And being able to repurpose the terminology.
Because everything's energy and vibration and intention, and so what you call it and how you think about it.
It's like a spell,
yeah, that's right. And that's why writing words is called spelling.
So that can be quite positive in how you say things, and it can also be quite damaging. So we need to be careful with what spells we're casting on our children when we're talking about their abilities and where their strengths are.
Because I don't think about what's wrong with them with that, if they're getting in trouble all the time, or like, so my daughter with the processing, she might miss certain things, but I'll try to focus on, so what your talents and skills, what are you really great at? And then
but still being able to identify that there's a thing there, because you can't then just ignore it and go, no, you're fine.
With it,
and they struggle.
But don't just make that the only thing you focus on, because then they're always putting themselves down and focus on what they can't do. So let's focus on what you can do.
Focus on the strengths and focus
what you want, not what you don't want. Like, attention energy flows where your attention goes, and all these wonderful sayings come to mind.
So strength focused, where their gifts and talents lie, and really, if they have a particular interest in something, drive that forward and bring that to the forefront. And
okay, so it comes back to what you're saying, like getting that creative energy out in a way that means something to them, helps them spiritually as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I also think of, this is something that comes to mind in terms of being strength focused. If you see your different gifts and abilities, like the cylinders in an engine, you might have your one primary one that's at the forefront. You let your primary strength or talent drive the development and support the development of the other cylinders in the engine. And that's how you bring about this notion and lifelong commitment to thriving.
Fantastic. How long have you been a motor mechanic as well? This is incredible. I should have put that in the
Never.
I've got something that's been like coming through massively from, let's say, the spirit world, right? No, I'm not channeling. No one's in my room right now. And Xavier gets all excited. But something through, so I'm a hypnotherapist. So through hypnosis, spirit does come through for clients very, very strongly, quite directly. And so a recent theme I've been having with a lot of people has been their spirit guides coming through and telling them amongst a whole lot of things around their intuition and their own spiritual skills and abilities. The same thing keeps coming back over and over and over again, is you have to meditate more. You have to meditate more. It's something that people completely unrelated. I've been a meditator for over, like, as in solid, for over 15 years, and I'm going to be teaching soon. So what's really interesting is that they keep saying, you've got to meditate more, you've got to meditate more. You said that a big thing for you was the yoga and then into that meditation. What does the meditation do as far as like connection to spirit world? Is that something that's like an important, is it tuning in? Like what do you think the meditation is?
For me, meditation touches on a lot of different things, but I find that at a fundamental level, it brings you back into your body. It helps to clear your mind and bring you into a state where you're present and you're able to focus and concentrate. And when you look at different elements of meditation, whether it's like mantra or visualization or even breath work, it's all about being able to relax, being able to feel into yourself and notice and become aware of where you are and what you're feeling. And as you engage with different styles or elements of meditation, then there's different focuses and different things that you're working through. And I think that it's not all about just relaxing, but it does take a little bit of work and takes discipline. And through a meditation practice, you can equip yourself with the things that you need to work through and process daily life. And I think once you get that sorted out, like I said before, it touches on that concept of the iceberg. You have your mental health and your well-being, and then through meditation, it allows you to dig deeper.
Yeah. So is it like that grounding to be able to go deeper rather than some strange portal switch so the spirit world can be in touch? It's like for you to...
Yeah, it's so you can focus, so you can clear the way to access deeper parts within yourself.
And so you're doing that with students as well, with some guided stuff and teaching them breathing. What have you noticed with kids with meditation? Are they naturally better at it, or is it harder to have them focus? It sounds crazy.
I find that kids can concentrate and visualize a lot better than adults. They're more free flowing with their thoughts. And say if I was to ask kids to journal after they meditate, they get into it a lot quicker.
Yeah, cool.
And they're more descriptive and having more vivid kind of descriptions than, say, adults who haven't got a meditation practice.
Yeah.
In essence, they're more imaginative. And the imagination is the interpreter of our intuition. So working on your imagination helps you to develop your intuition.
Yeah, that's been a common one that I've had when I mentor my students, is that they're not sure the difference between their imagination and intuition. And they think that if they're imagining things, then it can't be intuition, it's just their imagination, and they're not sure. So yeah, I know I learnt, like, often when I get messages for clients, when I'm channeling, I get shown an example of something in my life or something that I would relate to, so I understand it better. But when you're first learning, you might think, oh no, that's just, it can't be channeled because that's just something I would know. So it can be confusing, and kids' imaginations are just so vivid and fun. So yeah, that's
it. And so meditation helps to get you out of your way when you're trying to develop your intuition.
Yeah, I love that. So you're talking before about children, like the generations, like coming through, and how children now are seem to be more receptive. And I've heard the terms used before, like rainbow children and star seeds. And can you explain a little bit about where all that fits in with children? Because some people go, oh, I have a rainbow child, or they think they're more special or something. Like, can you a little bit of all that stuff?
When I first started this work, I was really invested into learning about the different types of children and the different, the difference between, say, indigo, crystal, and rainbow children. And
that's the three,
it just seems like it just kept going and kept going. Like there were all these new terms and all these different classifications. And I think I kind of lost interest when I was seeing all these different terms. And while it's great to have these different ways to classify and identify energetic traits, I see them all as generation gaps or energy gaps. And so it's common to see strong links between the indigo children generation and, say, the influx of ADHD children. And with the emergence of a lot of children with autism and autism spectrum related characteristics that related a lot to crystal children. And so with the emergence of rainbow children, there was a lot of links between a combination of ADHD and autism, so indigo and crystal kind of energies. And I think for me, at the end of the day, it's all about being able to recognize that all these different generations and waves of children represent parts of what we can be, like parts of our greater potential and parts of our connection to more authentic versions of ourselves. So it's like they're here to remind us of what we can be and what kinds of gifts and traits that we have and what sorts of things we can develop and how our systems like education and health and lifestyle need to change to help us to get back to there. So it's kind of like they're there to lead us back towards our being greater versions of ourselves. That's how I see it.
Yeah, so we're supposed to have like amnesia when we come here and for this school of Earth, and not remember why we're here, to make it a bit harder and challenging for ourselves to learn our lessons and then
evolve. To
evolve. But then you hear all these great stories, and I believe this would be what you're referring to, of like crystal children or indigo children, people like that, that they do have those flashes and memories of, like I was talking about before in that group where they're all commenting. They say, I remember a past life, or they have these, I actually believe, when I've sort of felt into it, when you have prodigies, child prodigies that are so freaking amazing at an instrument or something, it's like they're picking up the past life. That's why, or something that they've brought in that energy that it's so fresh, and that's why they're so good at such a young age, because they're picking up other things.
Yeah, they're bringing through their old gifts.
Yeah. So that, and then the past life bits that they remember, that's just so we can hear those stories, and realize there's more.
Yeah.
Than just waking up, getting it, having a job, and eating it.
Yeah.
There's more to life. So that's how I think about it. Yeah, that's why they're here. So it's not all children in every like, it sounds like a spiritual, shiny way of saying Gen Y, Gen Z.
Yeah, that's
Gen
it.
X. It's just, yeah, Indigo's the older one. Yeah, anyway, it doesn't really matter the labels, but there's some people like that are just scattered throughout to help us pay more attention, to wake up people a little bit, or get them thinking. Yeah,
they're light bearers. They bring the light.
Light bearers, I like that.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Yeah,
I love that.
so people, if they suspect or they think their child is pretty switched on, and they see things and they've told their parents about things, and they're not sure what to do about it, can the parents book in a session with you or something like that to have a chat about what they're seeing and how you can nurture them, or how do they go about it?
Yeah, so I have my website, which is www.nathanstar.com.
Cool.
And I am pretty active on answering all my messages and emails. So parents can reach out if they're ever curious about their child, or they want to, say, book in a consultation and look for ways to explore their child's gifts and extend them a little bit more. And yeah, I'm always happy to chat and help out parents and help them to find their way. And I'm in the process of developing some online workshops,
Great.
as I find that sometimes it's been a bit difficult to get families to attend all at once, because they have other commitments like weekend sports and birthday parties and things like that, as you do,
as everything opens up.
So I'm hoping to have that out within the next month or two.
Great. They should follow you and see updates and see when that comes out.
Yeah, that's right.
Podcast in the meantime would be awesome.
Yeah, just stay tuned on the podcast, and that's
Clairvoyant in the classroom.
Yeah, thank you.
Love that. That'll be great.
That's
And
such a good idea.
oh, it's fantastic. And look, the service that you're providing all of us. So I don't have children, but the fact that you are helping other parents and other children, it helps all of us in this. As our planet evolves and we evolve as well. This is such important work. It's such important education, and getting it out there, and including children as part of the big picture, rather than just, when you're older and you're a priest, you can hold all of the information. It's like, get them while get them before we've corrupted them. I love that.
Set them up for life with the life skills that can help them, essentially help them to help others, one person at a time.
God, I feel better about the future talking to you.
Trees.
Yeah, I know. I just feel better about the future knowing that people like you are out there, because there's so much doom and gloom about, kids are always on their technology. This is bad and this is bad. I think every generation does that to say how. Yeah,
every generation has something to fear about the next generation. So it's time to break that stigma and
break it, and just to hear the work that you're doing makes me feel good about the planet for our great grandchildren.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway, I think, for the listeners, I feel that I'm getting for them, is that you can help children foster and nurture and educate from a young age, instead of waiting till the generation of their parents and before that, when they feel like they're messed up as an adult. And they have to go see psychologists and hypnotherapists and psychics and all that to help sort out their heads, because they could have learned about boundaries and intuition and how to ground themselves,
integrate their talents. And
you can start now. You're never too young. 3-year-olds are seeing tigers in the hallway, so you can help them from a young age to understand that, instead of having to wait till you're 35 and think you're crazy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think my takeaway from having this conversation with you today is a reminder that, yeah, we can start early, and it's never too early to start working on yourself and setting up structures in place that can support you to be at your best and live the most authentic and free life that you can live. And when I was starting out on this journey of all this work, I noticed that a lot of people had their spiritual awakenings, say around their middle age, late 30s, early 40s. And I know for me, I started in my early 20s. Well, it's been lifelong, but I plugged back into it in my 20s.
Yep.
And it's really driven me to help people to be aware of and be accepting of these parts of themselves for a lifetime rather than for half a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not here long. Don't waste it.
Yeah,
We
that's
want
it.
to help children grow up to be well-adjusted adults, not adults that need assistance because they get those tools from a young age. So
that's it.
Thank you, Nathan, for stepping up and listening to your own intuition.
Yeah.
And following the signs. The child with the trees, he was put in your class for a reason.
Yeah.
To help you as a stepping stone to spur you on. So thank you for him for choosing the path. I hope he's doing all right now. And all those little signs and synchronicities on the way to help you pay attention. So well done for stepping up. And that's why you would have had those experiences as a child, so you can reflect back on them as confirmation of why you need to help children. So this is how this works for people listening. Like,
there's no coincidences. It's all
that's a myth. Exactly. So pay attention to those signs, because that's how the universe works and how it shares things with you, so you can reflect back and realize, yes, that makes sense. That's why I did that, and this is what I have to do, following your path and realizing why you're here. So good on you, Nathan, for stepping up and helping so many kids and parents and teachers out there. And we're hoping this podcast will also help more people find you as well, which is really
definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
We love you, Nathan. We'll have you back.
Yeah, gladly.
Awesome.
Thank you.
That's it for another episode. Thanks to our major supporter, Subtle Energy Sciences. Click the link in the show notes to access their full product range of quantum healing technology.
We're blown away by this technology and are so excited to share it with you.
And of course, we really want to hear from you.
Please leave your comments on our YouTube channel, or for those podcast listeners, you can email us at mickandthepsychic@gmail.com to leave your feedback or questions.
I'm a certified hypnotherapist and timeline regression therapist. If you wish to contact me to explore the source of an issue you're facing, just book a session at hernhypnosis.com and include the promo code MATP for 10% off. You can contact me on Insta and Facebook at hernhypnosis.
Check out my website at optimisticxavier.com.au if you feel you'd like to connect with me as a psychic medium, spiritual mentor, or intuitive coach. Include the promo code MATP for 10% discount. You can also find me on Insta, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
We look forward to connecting with you again next time as we attempt to leave no stone unturned.
Bye.
All right, cool. I reckon that should be okay.